Now, I know that Game Week 15 isn't even over yet, but there's already plenty to talk about. And in this video, I'm going to go through players to buy and avoid ahead of Game Week 16. Right, we're going to start off then by looking at some clean sheet odds projections from 11ify. What I'm not going to do when looking through these odds is go for the obvious teams. So straight away, I'm going to say Arsenal, Man City and Liverpool. They're always going to be amongst the top teams for clean sheet odds because they just dominate most of these projection algorithms, right? Although I would say, I'm not sure myself I would be trusting the Man City defence at the moment. But Arsenal and Liverpool, check them off. They're pretty much guaranteed to be amongst the top. Other teams I'm somewhat interested in. Bournemouth look like they've got some pretty good clean sheet odds coming up. Chelsea, if you round up match day 20, each of their next 5 games they are around 30% to keep a clean sheet. And usually I would say when I look at clean sheet odds projections, I would feel comfortable starting defenders that have 30% or above clean sheet odds. In Chelsea, well, at least for the next 4 fixtures, even match day 20, 26 is fairly close. They look pretty good. Other teams of note, I'd say Nottingham Forest as well. I know their clean sheet odds aren't quite 30%, but I just think of all of the teams that have cheap defenders that play for them. Forest are probably the one that I would most trust to keep clean sheets because they've proven this season that they can, and they can also do it at the top teams. I feel, I always think back to that clean sheet they kept at Anfield towards the beginning of the season. Spurs have decent clean sheet odds. There's a couple in there for West Ham as well, and Wolves are sort of turning it around. They got a couple of 20s and 30s in there. But yeah, I think standout teams from this list for me would be Bournemouth, Chelsea, and Nottingham Forest. Gotta admit, I can't quite believe I'm saying this considering what happened in Game Week 14. It hasn't played in Game Week 15 yet at the time that I'm recording this video. But just with those, well, we can see there, those are the fixtures that Chelsea have coming up. I just think with that fixture run, the Chelsea defence is going to be a good selection in the game. However, I suggested Levi Colwill last week and he got benched in Game Week 14. I was not expecting that benching. And I think what it has done is suggested that Enzo Maresca might have a weekend team and a midweek team. Levi Colwill is in the weekend team, but doesn't appear to be in the midweek team. Although I don't know if there's too much truth to be drawn from that, or whether it is just the case he was rested for that one game and it's nothing to worry about and we carry on. I do think of all of the Chelsea defenders, though, he is the most nailed on to start. So if you're picking one, I would say Levi Colwill is the one to go for. The others are either just too injury prone or just not nailed enough, in my opinion. I think just the fact he's a centre-back as well, I would suggest, Cucurella, Gusto could be good options at full-back. But I just think centre-backs, in my mind, just seem to be a little bit more nailed on than full-backs are. That's pretty simple analysis from me, I'll admit. But yeah, I do think if you're picking a Chelsea defender, especially at his price, right, 4.5 million, he's a good price. I'd suggest that Levi Colwill is probably the best Chelsea defender to go for. And then it's really hard not to mention Sanchez because of those fixtures once again. And he's averaging 3.55 saves per 90. But again, he was benched alongside Colwill in Game Week 14. So yes, he's a great option, but he does carry that risk of a benching. And, it seems really odd to me that Maresca rotate his goalkeepers in the Premier League. Again, it goes back to that sort of theory of him having a weekend and midweek team. I guess, there is a little bit of a risk going for Sanchez now, given that benching. But I still think he's a good option. He's made a decent amount of saves. He's keeping 3 clean sheets in 13 games. This is amazing. But given they've got a good fixture run here, it means they've had some poor fixtures to, get up to this point. So I do see some clean sheets coming in those games, and obviously some saves given the numbers he's put up in that regard so far. So yeah, I think he could be a nice option, but you just have to think about those midweek benchings, and potentially, if you've got someone like Sanchez and then someone like Fabianski on your bench, that could work out as a nice goalkeeper rotation. Because obviously if Sanchez doesn't play, if he doesn't start, he's not going to get, well, there's a very low chance of him getting subbed on, right? They're not going to do that in the middle of the game, or at least you think they wouldn't. So yeah, I think he still could be a good goalkeeper option. I think we have to talk about Joe Gomez. I mentioned Liverpool there. They're always going to be top in terms of clean sheet odds coming up. I know their fixture got postponed in Game Week 15, but looking ahead to Game Week 16, I think it makes Joe Gomez even more nailed on because it's, less games in short rotation, right? However, I don't know. I've seen a lot of people really interested in Gomez and actually early transferring him in before Game Week 15 when obviously the game got called off. I'm just not massively keen on him. I don't think he has the greatest injury record across his career. And I just don't trust his minutes. Now, I can completely see the upside of him, right? He's by far and away the cheapest Liverpool defender, 4.9 million. And when you look at the numbers, Liverpool are the best defence in the league this season. They're the number one defence. So you've got, and he's actually, just thinking about that, the other defence you could go for being Arsenal, who are the second best defence in the league. Their cheapest defender is Timber at 5.5, might be up to 5.6 by the time this video comes out. Joe Gomez at 4.9 is cheaper than any Arsenal defenders, and by the numbers, Liverpool are a better defence than Arsenal. So there is a really compelling case, of course, to bring him in. I'm not denying that. But I don't trust his minutes, basically. I know Quanza's waiting in the wings as well. He's not been that good this season, I'll admit. I don't think he's favoured very much by slot. But I still don't think Joe Gomez is nailed on to play every Premier League game during this period. I do think there are some clean sheets to come. I look particularly at that Fulham, Leicester, West Ham, and even Man United at Anfield. All four of those games, Liverpool could conceivably keep a clean sheet. But I would just be worried about Gomez's minutes. It feels a bit wrong mentioning a Forest defender when they're about to play Villa, Brentford, Tottenham, Everton and Wolves. But I do think that Forest defenders could be on the menu, even though they've got some relatively tough fixtures. I just think of all of the teams that have cheap defenders in their squads. Forest are probably the one that I would trust most to keep clean sheets because they have done this season. You know, I mentioned Sanchez and Colwill at the start, but I would personally back Nottingham Forest over Chelsea defensively to keep clean sheets. Now, they haven't played Man United at the time that I'm recording this video. The game is about to kick off. But if I was to pick one Nottingham Forest defender right now, I know Aina is the top scoring one, but I actually think Milenkovic is better. He's put up better underlying numbers in terms of attacking stats than Aina has this season. I've been told by some Italian fans that at Fiorentina he was actually quite disappointing from set pieces, despite putting up a fair bit of XG. He's a massive dude. He's got some real threat in the box, but he's not necessarily converting his chances so far. You can see there he's got 12 shots, 1 on target. He's had 12 attempts on goal. I'd imagine most of them are from corners. Sorry, 12 attempts, not attempts on goal. But I do think Milenkovic is the standout, and he's now substantially cheaper than Aina is. And yeah, I just go back to the point. I know they've got relatively tough fixtures coming up, but it wouldn't be outrageous to see them keep 2 or 3 clean sheets in that run, just based on how good they have been defensively this season. And yeah, just go back to, there ain't many teams keeping clean sheets at the moment, particularly teams that have defenders that are at this price point that you can guarantee are going to start every game. So yeah, I do think Forest defenders are wise. We'll see how the game against Man United goes. It might not be that Milenkovic is the one because he's injured, but I still think Forest defenders are worth going for. And finally, I really like the idea of Munoz from Crystal Palace. A lot of people sitting on Aït-Nouri, who they could probably sell for 4.7 million. And in Munoz, I think you've got a player that offers pretty much the same attacking upside that Aït-Nouri does, with a slightly higher chance of keeping clean sheets. I guess the fixtures coming up are not amazing. The Brighton one is their big derby, which is usually like a 1-1. I think that game's been 1-1 every time I've seen it, to be honest. Arsenal's obviously a tough one. Then Bournemouth, Southampton. And regardless of, clean sheet odds, he's been so good from an attacking perspective. I'd back him to get an attacking return against anyone. Obviously, just scored against Man City, right? So yeah, I think if you're looking to get rid of Aït-Nouri, which I would imagine, he hasn't played in this game week yet, but I would imagine a lot of managers will be lining up that move. I think Munoz could well be a really smart replacement for Aït-Nouri. On to some goals projections then, and similar to what I did with the defences, usually the obvious teams dominate in terms of projected goals. So talking about Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City is kind of a given, but it's those fringe teams, the teams that are sort of mid-table, the ones that are outstanding in terms of projected goals, I suggest are kind of the ones to pull out from this list. Again, similar to what we said defensively, I think Bournemouth could be pretty good going forward. I think to maybe someone like Semenyo, who a lot of people probably have in their teams already, or Evan Nilsson as well, although there's a lot of competition for cheap strikers in the game at the moment. Chelsea look really good, back to score a couple of goals. Well, if you round up, they're back to score a couple of goals in each of their next 5 fixtures. Who else we got there? Spurs, I guess they're pretty obviously good from an attacking perspective. Man United, there's a few games in there that they're projected to score a couple of goals as well. Obviously, Man City coming up next. And Newcastle, a few of those games, in fact, all of those games, they're back to score a couple of goals as well. I think, just looking at the rest of the list, yeah, for me, those are probably my standouts. Brighton up there as well for the next 4 games or so. They look pretty good. The likes of Mitoma, obviously João Pedro. Ruta's playing pretty well this season, or to be fair, I'd say Mitoma and João Pedro are probably the standout two there. The next thing I thought it would be useful to look at is just the top players for expected points over the next 5 game weeks, and how the big four, well, I'd say 5 because Isak is pretty much up there as well in terms of expected points, how they compare to one another in terms of captaincies coming up. And yeah, over the next 5 weeks, according to Fantasy Football Hub anyway, their expected points models, who could be the best captain for the upcoming game weeks. So for game week 16, it's Palmer. He's got 8.1 expected points compared to Haaland and Salah on 7.9. Salah in game week 17, 7.2 compared to Haaland on 6.6, Palmer on 7.1. Salah leads the way by far in 18. It's joint between the three in game week 19. So game week 19 is a real split captaincy. West Ham for Salah. Leicester is that for Haaland, and Ipswich for Palmer, so that's really tight. And then again, it's really tight between Haaland and Salah for game week 20. So yeah, just looking ahead, it's looking really tight for those captaincy decisions. And I'd actually say, of the 4 big players in the game at the moment, the one, certainly on captaincy alone, the one you could probably go without with is Saka. That's not taking into account that he's 4.5 million less than Haaland is. But in terms of captaincies, it certainly looks like those 3 leading are the ones that you want to be putting the armband on. But interestingly, Isak comes in this list as well. So Isak over the next 5 game weeks is the 5th top player for expected points. So I think that's, in my mind, kind of matches up where I believe he is. I think he's probably the 2nd best striker in the Premier League right now. He probably trumps Nicholas Jackson, just in a sense that he takes penalties. And I think he's got just more goals, like more different types of goals to his game than Jackson does. I get the feeling that Jackson is more of just a, not that it's a disrespect to him, but a bit more of a penalty box striker. Whereas Isak has proven he can score goals in multiple different scenarios from outside the box. And he's on penalties. And also, I didn't mention this in any of my previous videos to be fair, but I did on the deadline stream. Chelsea-Tottenham coming up, right? That's the game in game week 15. I think Jackson could well get his 5th yellow card in that game. I'm pretty sure every Chelsea-Tottenham game I've watched has been pretty hot, pretty heated. So yeah, I think that Jackson 5th yellow could be coming this week, which definitely makes Isak the 2nd best striker in the game in my mind and the 5th best overall. Did anyone else sell Mbeumo this week? I certainly did. I sold him for Semenyo and I sold Chris Wood for Isak. So I guess the silver lining is that Isak managed to return. But yeah, a goal and an assist for Mbeumo was not what I ordered this week. He certainly looked back to his sort of normal levels as well in that game, put up pretty good underlying numbers. The goal he scored though, he created something out of nothing basically. He picked up the ball towards like the corner of the box, dribbled himself inside, beat 2 or 3 players in the box and absolutely wellied it past Nick Pope. It was a really good goal. So it wasn't like a high XG chance that Brentford, worked well to create for him. He made the chance completely by himself, to be honest. So again, that was a great game for him. And I suggest that people have now been rewarded for their patience with him. That Newcastle at home game was probably the last one I would personally want to keep him for as an owner. Chelsea, Forest, who I've been bigging up defensively, even though that's at the G-Tech though, that Brentford Stadium, they seem to be able to score against anyone there, to be honest. Then Brighton, then Arsenal after that. I just think, and then I think it's Liverpool after that as well. I just think the fixtures get really, really tough for him now. So I would probably, if I still had him, I would probably take my points and sell him at this point, because this was 1 game out of 5 where he actually put up any kind of goal threat. And even then, the chance was something he created for himself rather than Brentford doing it, which is obviously great for the player and it proves he's an excellent player, which I don't think anyone doubted. But I don't think it takes away from the argument that Brentford weren't necessarily, well, they aren't necessarily creating a lot of chances for him. So yeah, if I still had Bryan Mbeumo, if it's confirmation bias, if you think it's confirmation bias, then fair enough. But I'd probably sell him. I'd take my points and run. All right, and that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that and found it useful. I'm wearing a shirt which is a little bit different to the rest of my videos, but I'm getting this one out quickly before I head out on a swimming club Christmas do. So I'm about to go out for a bit of dinner. So I thought I'd get a video up before I do that. If you enjoyed the video and found it useful, please leave me a like rating. I'm hoping Milenkovic doesn't get injured, otherwise I look like a bit of an idiot recording this. But regardless, I still think the Forest defence are worth picking from, and I think most people will be able to work out an alternative to Milenkovic if he does get injured, right? So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please leave me a like rating, and you can subscribe to the Goal Goal channel if you haven't already. It should be just there on your screen. All right, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in my next video.